Hi guys, Kat Kerr, and today we're going to be playing with a journal kit by Weaver Leathercraft. Now for the past 2 months I've been completely obsessed with leather work, and so I reached out to Weaver Leathercraft and they were gracious enough to send me some goodies to play with. I specifically requested this journal kit because I'm still new to leatherworking and I wanted to see if I could tackle something like this journal. Now this kit came with pretty much everything that I needed to complete the project. I was especially happy that all the leather was cut perfectly. It was all the holes were already added. It was ready for me to assemble, and I love that. But my favorite thing about this kit, I have to say, is that it came with an additional template. So that's a wonderful option if I choose to do this leather journal again. Now I knew that I wanted to add some sort of image transfer to the leather, and so I went with Transfer Artist Paper by Leslie Riley. You simply print an image, cut it out, put it face down onto your surface, and then iron it in place. Now I wasn't sure how this transfer was going to work with the leather, but it ended up working beautifully. It didn't damage the leather in any way. Now here's the image that I selected for the journal, and I ironed it onto the front panel of the journal. What I love about this technique is that the image did not transfer completely. It looks aged and weather-worn, and I love that. Now I knew that I wanted to add some sort of text to the bottom of the image, and so I wet it with a spray bottle and some water, and then used these metal stamps to add my quote. I knew even before I started to add the dye that I was going to have these lines appear all over the journal because of the way that I'm applying the dye, which is with this soft dauber type of tool, and there was really no way around it because I didn't want to have dye on the image. And so my solution became to not try to cover or hide the lines, but to actually work with them and use them as part of the design element. The goal was to make this journal cover into a very rustic and grungy looking cover. I started this by first adding a heavy layer of dye to all the pieces. Next, I took a piece of very coarse sandpaper and I started scraping all of the leather pieces, giving them not only texture, but a roughness and a grunginess. Now, before I finish up that cover, I first have to add the panels to the inside of the cover. But before I do that, I had to screw on the button stud because it was inside the flap, and it's easier to install it while the flap is off. I added some leather glue to the inside of the flap and to the cover. Once that glue became tacky, I attached the two pieces and rubbed it with the roller. And then I did the same thing for the other flap. Unfortunately, I used way too much glue, and this came to bite me later on. Now, in order to have some sort of guide for my stitches, I used a wing divider to create a border around the entire journal. Now back to the cover. I knew that it needed an additional pop of color, and so I picked this turquoise leather paint, and using a dry brush, I just swiped it across the entire journal. There's no rhyme or reason. It's really just to give it some grunginess and a pop of color. I then took some gray leather paint and added some splatters. Now it's time to add the holes, and I'm using this 1/4-inch chisel set to add the holes along that line that I created with the wing divider. These chisels create a nice straight line, and it makes even my stitching look nice and even. Now it's time for some final touches. Here I'm taking an edge beveler and just taking a little bit off the edges, both the inside and the out. And normally I would add some dye to the edge and then burnish the edges. But because this is such a rustic looking journal, I decided not to add the dye and just simply to add a little bit of burnishing cream and then using that wood burnisher just to make them nice and smooth. Next, I used a hammer on the stitches as well as the edge of the journal just to round out and smooth out those edges. Next, I add the strap by using one of the rivets and the setter that came with the kit. You simply place one piece on top, one on the bottom, and then hammer it in place, and you're done. Now, when I went to go put my journal into the cover, it did not fit, and it was because of all of that glue that I had used in the previous step. And so I ended up just using a bone folder to dislodge the glue, and then I fit my journal right in, and my journal cover was perfect. So don't use too much glue. Note taken. Now this is without a doubt the largest piece of leather that I've worked on and the largest project. And so it was a lot of fun to work on, and so much so that I ended up making smaller ones using the same technique, because really it's only 3 pieces of leather per journal, and you are just stitching the panels on, and then you slide in whatever components you want on the inside and you're done. Now for my smaller ones, I didn't add a strap, I just wrapped them around with some sari ribbon, and I love the way they came out. Now, if you're looking to give leather work a try, this is a really great option because, like I said in the beginning, the kit has everything that you need, but you do need some additional tools, and all of that will be in the description below. But it was definitely a lot of fun, and I will be making more of these for sure.